sometimes.
Just
And
didn't noodle around with it and something happened.
yeah, okay, so welcome to the Historic Preservation Commission meeting for August 9th. So I guess we start with the approval of the minutes. For July 12th. Does anybody have any comments on the minutes? So it's just the 5 of us.
It is just the 5 of you, and you should be fine, because Sue, Jane, Doug, and Carol were all here. So if the 4 of them want to, you have to abstain since you were absent.
I read them at home, thought they were fine.
Okay, all right. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I'll second.
Minutes are from the July 12th meeting are approved as written. All right, so we have one public hearing for 490 Oakwood Avenue. So do I do the roll call first? Or do I do that?
We've officially done, I've done the roll call. I have
Okay,
who's
All right.
attending just to get attendance.
all right. And then I just read all this information.
Yeah,
Okay, the purpose of the public hearing this evening is to determine if the primaries. If the
accessory structure.
secondary structure and property located at 490 Oakwood Avenue should be issued a certificate of appropriateness to demolish the the accessory structure. Okay. Is there anyone who wishes to speak in favor of this proposed demolition?
That's me.
there you
Hi,
go.
Jenny.
Hi.
Is there anything in particular that you have to say about it?
Well, so the project is, the goal would be to take down the garage, which is not original. From what I gathered, it was built in 1954 and it's just your typical garage from 1954. It's too low to the ground, so the sills and plates are rotting, and it's kind of past its prime. And they'd like to take it down and put a new garage in its place. And we are ready to proceed with the ARB, but we need to get through an approval to remove the garage before we can get to that. And I believe you have the information on what we submitted to the ARB. It will be, we've probably done the best. The project as a whole, we've tried very hard to sort of hide the new to the old. And so this garage would be in keeping with the style of the house, stucco and hardy, like what's on the existing, with similar eave details and so forth. So it would be something that probably looks more like the house than the one that's there now.
Okay. Thank you for that. Does anyone have any questions for Jenny? Okay. And then, so do I need to read this?
Yes.
Okay, and I can just start. Okay, well, I'll just kind of, okay. Welcome to the meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission of the City of Webster Groves. This commission recommends to the City Council the adoption of ordinances designating single structures or sites, portions of structures, groups of structures, landscape elements, works of art, or integrated combinations thereof having a special historical or architectural interest or value as landmarks or historic districts. The commission reviews applications for certificates of appropriateness to remove or demolish. Number 1, designated landmarks, and number 2, structures within historic districts. In addition, this commission reviews applications for certificates of appropriateness before any of the following actions may be taken to a landmark property or to a property located in a historic district. 1, subdivisions. 2, boundary adjustments. or 3, a lot split. In making this determination, the commission sits as an administrative body and by ordinance hears the applicant and any other evidence that may be pertinent in order to accommodate the schedules of all applicants. The commission requests that all persons wishing to speak limit their comments to evidence regarding the historical significance of the proposal. Above all, please be concise and to the point. Comments voicing nothing more than general opposition to an application will not be tolerated. We request that you adhere to these guidelines and speak. Again, if you wish to speak, fill out the card. Thank you.
And we have no other persons to speak against or for who have shown up in person, putting it on the record, or have shown up on Zoom. So you're able to move forward with any next steps.
Okay, so does anyone here have any comments or anything about this particular one?
I drove by there. It does look like a 1950s vintage garage, and it's has some issues, as Jenny cited, and I think the new garage looks great. So it's not original, it's not historically significant. I'm sure the only reason we're looking at it is because it is within the boundaries of the district. So I think it's perfectly appropriate to remove the structure.
Yeah, that was one thing. I thought that the date is way off from the historic period. So yeah, I thought the same thing. Okay. Well, if no one else has anything to say, do we have a motion for 490 Oakwood Avenue?
I'll make the motion to approve the demolition of the accessory structure at 490 Oakwood Avenue.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And any opposed? All right, it has been approved. 490 Oakwood Avenue. The certificate of appropriateness has been approved for demolition.
Thank you, Jenny. All right.
All right, great. Thanks, Jenny. And that closes the portion of our meeting that is the public hearing.
Yep.
All right.
That one was an easy one.
That was easy. Felt almost like dramatic for what we were in. Okay, so next, visitor comments.
Oh, and actually, I will tell you, I had all kinds of things for you to show you where it was on the site and what we needed to determine, but again, it was from the 1950s, pretty straightforward. So
Restaurant homes.
And I apologize to all of you, you know, we had this grand discussion and I was gonna send things before I went out of town and there were just lots of last minute requests as I was trying to leave. And then as soon as I got back, I barely gotten, you know, out of my phone calls and the emails when the flooding started. So we've been focusing on that. So I did not really get you guys at all, the letter. I mean, our grand plan was to be able to edit the letter, determine that maybe next month was going to be the month that we were going to, you know, have a meeting and invite people to attend. And we had this whole sort of grand plan of some things to do. And I didn't get anything to any of you because there just wasn't time. So, I mean, I always hate pushing things off one after the other. But I know that I wasn't able to get something to all of you to take your own time to review. And I feel like every time we kind of do it sitting here at the table, we kind of banter about because no one has time to really think as they're reading and understand. So, I mean, there's a couple options we could do. Again, we've sort of talked about, we could push it off one more meeting and try to plan for the October meeting that we could have as the public meeting. I could try to see what more we need to kind of give to everybody to make the decisions. But I think the last thing we talked about was culling down this letter, either kind of almost, it was some of it was there was a little too much information, but yet not the right information. We were trying to talk about kind of focusing on that and then putting a very specific date of come and talk to us about this potential nomination. And then pulling together the basic information, which is pretty straightforward since we can kind of, not going to say steal, borrow some of the additional information from a lot of these other National Register nominations for restaurant homes.
Right, you can cite them.
Cite those. Thank you. I like that wording.
It's so much nicer than steel.
It is much nicer than steel.
We had kind of talked about, as I recall, maybe having the actual hearing on October 11th in conjunction with our meeting,
Yes.
rather, so we weren't in the back to school and we weren't into the election time.
Mhm.
And I was just kind of looking at the ordinance and scribbling down some dates, just kind of for my own mental organization. And it looks like, from what I'm understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, that if we have the public hearing on October 11th, a notice would need to go out to the owners, absolutely be mailed no later than October 3rd, and would have to be posted at City Hall October 7. And we would need to have a nomination from the Historic Preservation Commission, either on a prepared form or in the form of a motion. So we would need to have that to go forward. Then the Historic Preservation would need to submit that to the building commissioner. And then the building commissioner within 7 days would have to send a notice of intent to the nomination to the owners. So we'd have to do the form, if we go ahead and nominate, get it to the building commissioner. The building commissioner would send out notification. And then somewhere in there, we would have to get notice to the owners, then the posting at City Hall, and then have the hearing on the 11th.
That is correct. There's all of that information in there. The key thing is usually we hold the hearing when we are ready with all the background information.
Yes.
So I think there was a little bit of a conversation about having a meeting, inviting people to it while we were working on all that information. So potentially not having that public hearing on October 11th, but having a meeting with residents on October 11th and potentially following up with the hearing at maybe the November meeting. Only because then if there's concerns, if there's issues, if there's other information that someone wants to provide us. I mean, there could be something else that a resident could help with the nomination. It's better to hold that once you have everything pulled together.
I agree, because when I was looking at the documentation that's required after that, and then the time frame we have to get it, and for the amount of information, it's pretty quick.
Yeah, it's very quick.
And it's also a challenge when we only meet once a month to get all of that done really fast.
Yeah.
Especially when it has to happen in between meetings.
Mhm.
I was like, okay, this is a logistical and scheduling item to address.
Yeah.
So I agree that if we just kind of have a public information session, not an actual hearing, just to kind of familiarize people, get them a chance to ask questions on the 11th. And then we can kind of go from there, because that there is specific content for the nomination. And then after it goes forward and we vote on it, goes to city council, then there has to be an actual written finding of fact that goes to city council. And it has specific information. Presumably, the nomination can act as the basis of the finding of fact, but then there's a whole time frame that all of that has to take place in. So I really agree that I personally, I don't know how y'all feel, but would be more comfortable having most of that documentation in place before we start the clock ticking with the public hearing.
I agree, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's a great idea to just have some sort of informational public meeting in October. That seems good, because it sort of also moves us ahead, just gives us a bit of a landmark, moves us going. And in particular, maybe we'd get a resident or two that's like, kind of, oh yay, that might make it feel a little different too.
Yeah.
Particularly the one that already has a historic landmark. They
Uh-huh.
could show up, that'd be nice.
That'd be great.
It's always nice when if people have like pictures of family members or whatever, historic pictures of the house and stuff. It does a nice job at adding to the picture for everybody and what we submit.
I don't think it was the last packet. Last month's packet online did have a sample of a findings of fact for the Marshall Commercial Historic District. And so just as a reminder, this is just our local designation of historic. So it's a little bit different than what we normally see with the National Register nominations, but you can, of course, build off of them either way. But I did put that in the last packet. So that might help us with documentation, just as a reminder of, oh, they use this, this, and this, and they have the different names of those buildings have very different histories to each of them. These, we're probably not going to find as much history on each of the individual homes, but we'll probably be able to cite those other bits of information on Luster homes in general as some of our findings of fact.
Is the historic landmark for 505 Ridge Avenue, is that state or federal or national? Excuse me, city or national?
That is, I believe, both city and national. Here, I'm going to stop this for a second. Let's go to. So I feel like we tried two different places. We might already have it in our documents. Shared. HPC. I can now access my computer from here and files. Information, historic designation. What's the address on that one?
505 Ridge Avenue.
Ridge. Forgetting about that one. Okay, so I don't have it in this folder probably because it was done before this. Let's try one other thing. Just the listings, St. Louis County. Sometimes these are harder because they name them in different ways. I don't know if it has a name to it. Ridge.
Would be being like under Lustron or?
Yeah. So this is where they're all located, the PDFs of the National Register nominations. And a lot of them, sorry, they have, I'm scrolling through quickly, they have names. So Acton, Sons of Post Florissant.
Under a keyword, does that do these or the whole site?
It does the whole site. Yeah. Florissant, U City, Wildwood, St. Kirkwood, Florissant. Just trying to remember if it had another name to it, and I didn't bring up my other file, Kirkwood, Florissant, Clayton, Chesterfield, Maplewood, Ferguson, Kirkwood, Marlboro. Anyone sees it and I skip through it, I apologize and yell at me. Kirkwood, Rock Hill. Eastwood, okay, oh wait. No, that's 15 to 17 West Lockwood. Park, Florissant, Webster Groves, that's the Lockwood building. Kirkwood 2. No, Hawken House. I mean, there's a lot in Kirkwood. Kirkwood, Oakville, Florissant, Kirkwood, Florissant. Not seeing more Kirkwood, Glendale, Florissant. New City. Getting to the end, I might have to go look it up in a different way. Nope, Old Webster Historic District, boundary increase. Rock House, Rockwood Court Apartments. Maplewood. I'm not seeing it on here. Cedar Park Station. Stir. So it's not on the county's National Register, so I will have to go find. I'll look up the old ordinance and try to see what I can find. I thought it was National Register. I was positive it was National Register, but normally it would be on here. This is where I usually find documents when I'm looking for them. So we'll just have to see what other options I have to find it, but I'll look for it.
I did look up on the National Register website at the very beginning, all the different things. I never saw one in Webster.
You never saw
Groves.
one in Webster Groves?
Doesn't mean everybody. I don't recall seeing it. I don't know why I had the impression it was a local historic landmark. It seems to me I read that somewhere, but I couldn't tell you exactly where.
Yeah, and I felt like I had read something different that it always surprised me. Like, I think I always thought it was more than a local, and it always surprised me that it was more than local, but again, I might have read something wrong too. Let me see if I have. Oh, I just got rid of, didn't mean to do that.
Would there be anything in the municipal code of ordinances that you could search under a keyword? Or is
So,
that too much of a hassle?
Those ordinances, you can't find that.
Okay.
I have to actually ask Katie for them, or actually. Hold on a second. Well, so then the weird part was the historic ones weren't necessarily put with the zoning ones. So I do have, let me try one more thing just in case. We have a PC database. We have a database of every planning ordinance that's been approved in the city since the 1930s, 40s. It's on Ridge. Plat of a Ridge. These are all subdivisions, early subdivisions from the 40s. Ridge. Lots of Ridge in the names. 1950s. Ridgewood Plat, Rolling Ridge Nursery in the 70s. Emery Plat. Breckenridge.
Could we search by the specific address? Would that narrow it down?
It's not always put in correctly.
Oh.
I found there were a few things. So usually I try with the bigger, but I mean, we're already pretty far in. We're in the 2000s, so we're getting close to the point where I would have remembered it. So like once we hit Owen Ridge, yeah, now we're into I was here. So it won't be in this database. This is where I can usually, so all these ordinances that are down in this one, I actually have them in a folder. So I can pull up every ordinance that's planning related. But I think the historic weren't tied to them back then, like when they didn't determine those to be planning ordinances. But I would be able to get that ordinance from Katie and Jen in the clerk's office. I do have, let's try one other thing. Hold on, documents. I have a an ordinance list. Except, if I can only do it if I download it and then look for it, it's probably not worth the time. I have an old ordinance list that goes back to like the 90s, but I can do a search for names, but I have to first download it to this computer and then go through search. So I'll go look for it. I'm sure I can find it and have Katie or Jen help me find it and figure out what was in it and what information, because we can build off of it.
It looks like I did a search
Uh-huh.
on the just typical search on Google and found an article from the Webster Kirkwood Times from 2005, making reference to a meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission to make it a local.
Okay,
So it's local.
yeah.
2005. So you said, okay.
So that'd be interesting. So let's go to, can't
That's
hurt,
good.
agendas and minutes.
Take all that paperwork. We do have something to start with.
Yeah, it's an article. It talks about how many houses. It's pretty good.
Historic preservation, that was in your packets, trying to remember, oh, no, this
Doesn't go back,
only,
that's fine.
Yeah, this article says by far Webster Groves has the most in the area. Said Brentwood had 16 at the time. In Kansas City entirely had 15. St. Louis 13, Webster 21.
and we're down
Yeah, that's
Which is
shocking.
what
I just
you have here
counted
too.
13.
originally,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Does it say we got the first one?
Um,
Seems to be. What I found very interesting is that I read that in other people's information and just thought, wait a minute.
We should know that. We should know. We should
Webster
know.
Groves, Missouri, that's us.
Nice. Here's my packets. 22, we talked about this in February. No. My less strong packet. So that one had, no, there was an earlier packet that had all the articles in it. I'll find the information. I'll find a copy of that ordinance, because if it's 2005, I should be able to get that pretty easily. And we'll kind of go from there. Oh, it would have been approved by council. Hold on, council. Council agendas. There's usually a archive. Oh, I needed to go to the archive, is what I needed to do. And then I go to the archive for council agendas. Oh, but we're gonna have to go. We have to know a little bit more specific. Does it say what date the article is?
yes, well, it's October 21st through 27th, 2005.
Okay,
It's that
so,
week.
and was it saying it was upcoming?
It wasn't a
It
done
hadn't
deal
happened
yet,
yet.
but they said that they had a meeting on September 21st.
Okay. So this is the city council agenda. Nope, nothing on. And that date was October or November 1 of 05.
This says there were only 2,500 built total. It's not very many.
Mhm.
Before they
Yeah.
could do.
They
it.
couldn't meet the needs of the request.
Well, this is interesting. This is the Rockwood Court Apartments. As a historic landmark. And that was November 15 of 2005. They must have been doing a lot of designating at that time. PEU. Office building. Rockwood Court. All right, I'm not gonna keep dragging you through these, but it's probably somewhere in this general time frame. It might have dragged into 2006, but we know it was approved. And it would have been approved by the council. Okay.
The owners will know. Do you think it's still the same person that lives there? This person is prominently, I guess we can look that up. Angie Bosch.
Let's try. Oh, shoot. I have this as a shortcut. Let me- What's the address on Ridge?
505.
505.
I think that the letters going out to the owners won't be that hard since there's only 13.
It's now in an LLC,
Oh, okay.
but it's with ownership of someone who lives in Webster.
Oh, so they rent it?
I'd have to go back into our information.
Okay.
But it looks like their mailing address for taxes is different than the address. But yeah, it is now in an LLC. Okay. Yes, letters should be easy. There's not as many to go out. So the conversation was just trying to finalize this letter. Put together what we're going to talk about at the public information in October. Start putting together any documentation that we need for the findings of fact for the hearing. And I think that's kind of it.
Mhm.
So everyone good, what's still good with October 11th for just the discussion with residents?
Sure.
Yeah, I think that's a good.
Yeah. I think it's good.
a good-
I'd forgotten we had given that extra month. I kept thinking I was behind and we were supposed to be doing it for September. Okay.
Do you think we would be able to do a pamphlet like that are presented out there for Washington?
I don't think you're gonna have as much information. It might be something different. And we kind of had talked about where we've been cutting out printing really out of the budget. I have
Yeah.
still thousands of them up in the attic in boxes that I bring down as I refill them probably every 2 or 3 weeks with
Mhm.
whichever ones have been taken. But I'm thinking we're gonna start with more digital.
Yeah.
And start with it being something digital. So we could probably create something that could eventually be printed in a pamphlet.
Mhm.
But right now, my printing budget is very low.
And our budget as a commission is pretty.
You have $1,000.
So, yeah, we don't know what's going to be coming up. So if we can handle things digitally and without dipping into that, perhaps that would be the thing to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, that $1,000 will help if you wanted to hire someone to take professional photos, or if you wanted to like do some extra things or have someone do some additional research. Those are some opportunities that you'd have that they've used some of that money for in the past.
Sorry, something just triggered in my head. We had talked about the DED workshop to get the grant. You probably got the notification. I did that they postponed it for a week. It was supposed to be today and they've moved it.
I think I did see that.
Yeah.
I
I know that was,
looked at it and blinked.
yeah, that was an item that we had talked about,
Mhm.
looking at and following up, but they did move the date.
Yeah, I'll have to make sure I put it back on the calendar. Okay. Anything else anyone can think of that they need from me?
A short, sweet meeting.
Yes.
So are you
Yeah.
gonna send us the,
I will. I'm gonna send
Word
you the
doc?
Word doc.
yeah,
Definitely, because I know it's easier for people to make edits. And I think we had a combination of I'm gonna send a bunch of different letters. I'm gonna send, like, I think there's this longer one. And then there were a couple different options we had for the other project, which had some sentences that I think were good that you might want to use. So I'm gonna probably send you a couple different Word docs, which is what my intent was last month, that I was just gonna send you a couple different Word docs. So I will send you both the letter that is actually Lustron. I think it's the old one. And then I think there was one that Angela made edits to. And then there was also a different one for the other potential project, which was more about just like, do you want to volunteer or get information? And maybe I'll send you that one too. So you might be able to mix and match some of the sentences.
Okay.
And what about the ordinance designating the ridge property?
I will,
So
I'll
we
find
can
that one.
Get an idea of the volume of information that'll be needed for the finding of fact, because if we're gonna move forward, we need to just start working on it now.
Yeah.
I mean, the last thing I know everybody needs to do is more stuff to do, but it's so hard when we only meet once a month. You know, it seems like we have to kind of be doing stuff in between to
So
move
I will-
forward.
Also remind you, because this one is probably, so the Ridge one will only be a packet for one single, like one house.
Right.
So the sample one that was attached to the July meeting will probably be more helpful, because that was for a small commercial district that had multiple properties. So this would be a little bit more along those lines, because we would have we'd have the, you know, at least the basic information of the multiple properties. It might be that on some of them, we know that there were only a couple owners, you know, because there is that kind of information that we can find. So this findings of fact might be a little bit of a better example. I think you still need Ridge, because that's going to give you some key information that you can reuse in this designation. But I think it'd be important to know how, like, some of the history significance sections, description of the environment and surroundings of each property, you know, saying like certain ones have things hidden, or, you know, you can still tell that they are one, but they have siding on them, or whatever it is. All of that's going to need to probably be listed one by one for each of the properties. But that's the findings of fact is linked in that packet from last month.
Then this is a little bit of a different thing too, because they aren't geographically contiguous.
Right.
Yes.
Right, it's not a district. And they're also the same building for the most part.
Yeah.
So and
Yeah.
the description is a little bit different.
Yeah.
And I know that a lot of them were built by the same company. So it'll be interesting to see who built all the ones here, which would be something I assume we need to know.
Yeah. And we
Yeah.
should be able to do something similar to what Steve had done with the Joy Built homes, because all the building permits are on the library's website.
I found a whole bunch of them
Okay,
already, so.
perfect.
I didn't really look at them too
Okay.
much, but I did find it.
As long as we find them, I mean, I think really that can be additional exhibits
Yeah.
that can be a part of for the city council.
It helped because, like I said, there was only so many built. They weren't built for very long.
No,
Yeah.
couple
Yeah, it's like a
years.
short
So
time
the-
frame too.
Go through the permits pretty
Yeah,
and dirty, like all the ones on Simmons were built very close together.
Right.
Time period,
yeah.
so.
Was it Ann last meeting that said there was one in her neighborhood it's a rental? Apparently this one that's
Yeah.
in your neighborhood.
Yeah, it's right across the street from me.
I wonder how many of them are occupied by owners at this point.
We'd be able to check on county and we'd be able to check in our occupancy records. I'm not sure.
That's true. Send out the letter and they don't.
Right.
So
And what
usually
we
we
do.
send it to both the property and, like in that case, we would, with this small of a mailing, we would send it both to the property owner and to the property address itself. So if there's a second address in county, we send it to both. It's kind of what we do for other mailings.
Maybe after our October meeting, if there's some consensus and excitement, at Webster Kirkwood Times might do another article.
Oh, that would be very cool.
You know,
Okay.
yeah. It's like a nice article they did 16 years ago, 17 years ago.
17 years ago.
Almost
Yeah.
17 years ago.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
Yeah.
Great.
Anything else?
I think that's not, that's it. huh?
I'm gonna ask for a motion to adjourn.
Okay, do we have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
I second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye.
Aye. I guess no one's opposed.
No one's opposed.
We are adjourned.
All right.
Thank you, everybody.
Here.
Thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Have a good
Thank you.
week.
Thank you.
Aye.